as I began to build a relationship with this man, and as I was building this relationship with this man, that I had so many red flags, so many red flags. Not only was he older than me, but like he was like a gambler. It was not a lot. There was no stability there. I was working like this job when I was working in Chicago, and I was making all the money. It was just like, what is he bringing to the table other than using your body, or having some place of security because you're the one that had the house, the apartment, the this, the that, the car, right? And so there were so many things, so many flags that were there, but because I wanted something so bad, I ignored it. And so we have to get to a place that when we find ourselves looking back, you ask yourself, where did that come from when I'm talking about the tolerance? Like, why did you tolerate that? Hey guys, this is your girl Tiffany here with another episode of Own Your Truth. This podcast has just been a blessing, not just to me, but to those who have been seeing me in passing, in the streets, in the family, everything. It has been a blessing. It's just been a wonderful time for me to embrace a new path that God has for me, a new path that He's stretching me in. Lord, I mean, this stretching feels very uncomfortable, but is allowing the Lord is allowing this to awaken a lot of things in me, and I'm truly grateful for that. So if you have been enjoying these podcasts, I want you to please drop some comments below. If you hear something that I'm talking about, you want me to expound on it more, you want more stories, or if you have topics that you want to discuss or want me to discuss, special guests or anything like that, I want you to drop it in the comments below, or you can email onyourtruthinfo@gmail.com. So today, our episode was, I guess, birthed out of a little mini Bible study that I was having with my children the other day. We were reading a scripture on forgiveness, and in our conversation, it sparked me to pose the question to them. Is there anything that has happened in your life? Yes, they're 12-year-old and 9-year-old life. Has there been anything that has happened in your life that you feel like you have not forgiven somebody of? Because the scripture was kind of like, we should forgive so God can forgive us. And so they both were sharing certain things with them, with me. And as they were sharing, just little snippets of things that it may have happened in school, just people who they feel like just kind of get away with stuff or just stuff like that. It was my turn to share. And I said, one of the things that I'm working on is forgiving myself. And then my son was like, "What do you mean, Mom? What do you mean?" And I said, well, there have been many times in my life that I have made a lot of mistakes. I made bad choices, and not to excuse it because of ignorance or being naive or just anything like that. Some things were just common sense, and I did it. And so when I was explaining stuff to him, it brought up one of the things that I share with them. I'm learning how to forgive myself in the areas of not taking myself through unnecessary trauma when it comes to regret. Because I used to like stay in a place of regret, like my life would be so much different, or this could have happened for me if I would have did this. If I didn't allow this to happen, I could have been here, or what somebody didn't do for me, just all of these kind of things. And so when I was giving them just a different examples one of the examples that came up to me was forgiving myself for just looking back. And that is one of the things that we want to talk about, how to move forward and not allow our past to hinder us from being all that God wants us to be. One of the stories I shared with them was I can't even tell you how old I was when I got married to that man, okay? But out of that relationship, I had birthed two children, and they are 21 and 20 now. And I believe they will be on this podcast with me soon. But one of the things that really stuck out to me, and sometimes I have to um, sit still like long enough because many of the things that have happened in my life, it's like I can't believe that I was at that place. Like it takes me like a while, like, okay, when were you living in this state? When did you live on that block? And I remember when I met him, I was about maybe 18 years old and he was in his 30s.
Did you say 30s?
I said 30s.
And you were 18.
I was 18.
Okay, hey y'all, this is Jerry, the producer. I just wanted to make sure I heard that right. That's all.
You heard that right. He was 30 something, 30 something, and I was 18. And so it took me a while to kind of unpack where my mind was then when I dated him, because one of the things that came up to me, like I share all the time, I grew up in a just really religious environment, right? And so, although, some of it was healthy because, of course, you want to be protected, in a way, but then some of it was unhealthy, right? And so, I was looking for an escape. Okay. And so I was being wooed and dude and died and taken to the movies and flaunted and all this kind of stuff because, I'm the young tenderoni. Okay.
Wait a minute. wait a minute.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Where we going with this podcast? Okay. So, yes, I don't know how this happened. I think I was with my friends and we were at like Walmart. Oh Lord, please don't tell me this. Cause I met my current husband at Walmart. I just thought about that. Oh my goodness. I think I was at Walmart. And I'm 42, so this is over 20, 30 years ago. So I was in Walmart, I was with my friends, and this guy, he started to talk to me. We exchanged numbers, and that was it. I was in church, but I really wasn't in church because I got older, right? And so um I remember we had left the church because I don't know if y'all know my story, but I was attending, it was my grandfather's church, and he was preaching and teaching that Jesus was coming back. Well, we know he coming back, but no man knows the day or the hour, right? And so at that time, it was March 30th, 1997. People was preparing for Christ to come back. They sold possessions to people. We were taken out of school. We was like literally legit living in the church. Okay. It was like people on top of people, families on top of families, newscasters and defects workers on top, like what y'all got going on, because this is like not cool. And so that transition happened, and a lot of people were disappointed because Christ didn't come back, right? And so I was in between trying to figure stuff out. My mom stopped going to church. I started going to another church, and we just back and forth. And so I met, I had some friends that I was hanging out, and I remember we were at the store and I met him and I gave him my phone number. And when I met him, I remembered he had four children. And so, and I was just mesmerized by the attention, right? And so that was new to me because I've been in this environment where, we were like not socializing with the outside world. You follow what I'm saying? And so because we wasn't socializing with out, like this was like something new. Like, okay, this can go somewhere. Like, what is this doing? You know? But he knew what he was doing because he was in his 30s. That's the age of my daddy. You know what I mean? But it was until I got older that I realized, because for years I used to always say I didn't have daddy issues. And the reason I was saying that I did not have daddy issues was because I knew that my dad had a sickness. He was dealing with addictions at that time, and God has freed him. Hallelujah. But at that time, I it was like I gave him a pass. You know, he don't know what he's doing, so I I don't have daddy issues. So long story short, the Lord had reminded me or just revealed to me that me dating somebody that was older older than me like that was a sign of somebody having daddy issues. I was looking for protector. I was looking for my father, okay? And so I know that people say age is just a number, but that's not true. That's my
That's
belief.
not true at all. Like that's not a thing. We got to stop saying that.
Because you got to think about all of the things that comes with that, right? So even though I'm an adult now, you still like 15 something years older than me. You know what I mean? And you just think about that reverse form if I was a baby and all that, that's kind of creepy, But
Extremely creepy.
I wasn't looking at the creepiness in that. I was just looking like, okay, somebody's interested in me. This is, I was, like I said, I was running. I was trying to get out of my home and all this kind of stuff. He had 4 children. So, long story short, I end up getting pregnant. And when I got pregnant, um, just it was then that a lot of stuff came out. Like, more children came out, you know. Um, oh my God. And we talking about not looking back, right? And the reason I'm looking back now because the Lord wants me to help somebody with this who may be dealing with this same thing. Um, Many times you can be blinded by your wounds that came from in your home, and because you have these scales on your eyes, you're just looking at somebody who wants to give you attention, somebody who wants to spend time with you, somebody who wants to spend their money on you, all these kind of stuff. That's just a temporary fix. It's not ultimately what I believe that the Lord wants to have for your future life, right? Because this is where resentment comes in. This is where regret comes in. And so, as I began to build a relationship with this man, and as I was building this relationship with this man, that I had so many red flags, so many red flags. Not only was he older than me, but like he was like a gambler, it was not a lot. There was no stability there. I was working like this job when I was working in Chicago, and I was making all the money. It was just like, what is he bringing to the table other than using your body, or having some place of security because you're the one that had the house, the apartment, the this, the that, the car, right? And so there were so many things, so many flags that were there, but because I wanted something so bad, I ignored it. And so we have to get to a place that when we find ourselves looking back, you you ask yourself, where did that come from when I'm talking about the tolerance? Like, why did you tolerate that? What areas in your life were wounded that you had not dealt with? Granted, I was young. I did not have the relationship that what I felt like was expected to have with my parents, to have these kind of conversations. And a lot of people would be like, well, where were your parents at when you was dating a 30-year-old? And I'm not going to say they were really active, but when they met him, one thing he told me, he was like, I only married you because your parents was like in my throat, talking about, better than being this old and not. And I'm just like, for real? So you didn't really marry me because you wanted to be married to me? And to be honest, I only married him because, he was a habitual cheater. Okay. Every time I turned around, it was like one day I was driving and we were married. And there was a situation I was 1 week from delivering our second child. And my brother was using my car, and as I was in, like, a week out after my baby was born, I received a call from the FBI.
Wait, wait, wait. Wait.
I told you I got a story.
Did you say FBI? The Federal Bureau of Investigations,
Yes, ma'am.
FBI?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yes,
All
ma'am. I
right.
said the FBI.
Okay.
I'm
I'm
te-
listening.
I'm telling these stories, y'all, man. So I remember going into labor with the baby. I had the baby, right? And he brought me home. I can't even remember if he was there. I don't think he was there for the delivery. But we were married. He brought me home, and I remember just really begging and pleading with him to stay with me because I had my son. He was almost 2 or 2, but it was like new. I'm a brand new mom of 2, and they're a little small. And I remember just begging him to stay with me, and he did not stay with me, right? And it was a few days later that I got a call from the FBI saying that he was arrested. And I was like, well, what did he do? And the lady began to tell me the story that um him and a couple of people were arrested for credit card fraud. So, and they was like, we have court coming up, and in order for us to release him, we have to you have to be there because we have to release him to his wife. And I'm like, Dad. And I'm like, I just asked you to stay home with me. Why you didn't stay? So long story short, my brother was using my car because I couldn't drive nowhere because I just had a baby. And my brother came to pick me up. I was dropping him back off at work so I can go to this other county because it was like an hour or something away with a brand new baby, right? Because this is his scapegoat too. I got a wife and I got a new baby at home. Then I'm gonna go be my wife since you didn't want to stay with me before you got locked up. But anyway, while I was driving, taking my brother back, my brother was driving. This lady drove on the side and she said, "Do you know Zach?" And my brother was like, "No, no, I don't know." And then I said, "What did she say to you?" And he said, "She asked me if I knew." And I said, "You do know him. Follow her." And baby, he followed her. He whacked her down. She came to part to the side, and he ushered her into the back, because it was like it was a minivan or something. So I slid the door open. Can you tell me that this lady was like 8 months pregnant?
Stop playing.
No, man.
Stop it.
It's 8 months pregnant.
You're not telling the truth on this podcast today.
I'm telling all the truth. Okay. She was
Your
she was
life
like
is a
7.
movie.
Yes, she was like 7 or 8 months pregnant, and she came over, and I was like, wow. She's wild. I'm wild because I got a new baby. You about to have a baby. Like, what we doing? And I think my marriage license was in this car. Okay. And I was like, no. She was like, he told me this was his aunt's car, his sister's car. He made up a story, right? And I was like, no, ma'am, it's my vehicle and we're married and I got a brand new spanking baby right here. And basically, she told me she had been in a relationship for a few time, a few, I don't know if it was years, but she had been involved with him for some time. And she literally told me the day that she conceived because she recorded in her mind that me and him had got into an argument and he left my house, and she was like, I know the day that I got pregnant because you got in the fight with him, he came straight to my house. I was like, man, y'all would not believe the junk that I have been in. Okay, so would you think that I would have just turned back home and just went, with the baby? No, I didn't do that. Guess what I did? I still went to go get that man out of jail. hmm So, long story short, we I made it to the courts, and once I got to the courts, they released him. I'm waiting for him to be released. As he's released, of course, the first thing is on my mind is confronting him about this encounter. And so, me even talking about this story now reminds me of all of the warnings that God was placing in front of me. You know what I mean? Because this is some real life stuff. He was showing me who this person was before I even got involved, and I still was ignoring the signs. So, of course, when he got in the car, guess what? He just denied everything. Just kept denying, kept denying, kept denying, kept denying. And so, as he was denying all of this stuff, I knew he was telling a story because I had the proof right in my face like an hour before meeting him. But that didn't stop anything. Still came home. He was still on the same thing. And these are things that ate me up for years. For years, it ate me up because I felt like there was no way out. I felt like this is all that I deserved. I felt like I didn't have people that I can talk to. I didn't really have a lot of people in my life that was kind of reassuring me of my value and my worth. You know what I mean? Um, there were many times that, I dealt with a lot of jealousy, when I was coming up, people liking me, people don't liking me, people talking about me, people trying to expose me. Like, and I'm at the place in my life that nobody can tell you something that I wouldn't tell on myself about. And so when I start having just these conversations with my children, it was bringing up how I have two sets of children. So I have a set of children that are adults, and then I have my young ones. And so because I have my young ones, my older children know what they lived through, but these new ones, they wouldn't or won't know about my life before them if I didn't share that. And those are just different challenges that I kind of faced as I was coming up, when I was dealing with my mom issues, my dad issues, because it's like all I knew was this, like a chaotic marriage, the going back and forth, just having babies, leaving, that kind of thing. And all I knew was a church going person, loyalty to the religious community, but the the family part was, there was a lack there. And so when I was talking to my children, I was like, wow, I don't want my two youngest ones to just see me as this, what they're getting me now. I want them to be able to have these open and honest and transparent conversations with their mom and know some of the things that I've dealt with in my life. And so, because all of this ties into that generational curses or generational patterns, generational, all these things that you want to cut off. And so when I was talking to them about that, my youngest one, she's still kind of going back and forth with, like, my mom was married to somebody other than my dad. but that was a life that was before you. And just trying to explain to them that their older siblings have different dad, so that's new to me. And so, but while I'm sharing it, I am getting more vulnerable about the places that I was in. And so sometimes you don't tap into these places because sometimes they bring up, wounds that you don't want to deal with. But I was just so grateful that as I was sharing the things that I need to work on, or I have worked on, when it comes to forgiving myself for the things that I put myself ultimately through. It was reminding me that I am healed, and I have really worked through a lot of hiccups and a lot of major milestones in my life that some of my family members are still working on. They are bound by, and they still have a lot of strongholds. And so while I was sharing the stories with them about, now I didn't go into detail about that woman and that pregnancy and stuff like that, but
We are so glad that you did not go into detail with your kids about that part, because they would have had even more
they would have
questions.
had, girl, listen, I had told my son, I had said to him, I said, because they was like, Mom, what were you thinking about dating somebody like that? I was like, I was not thinking, right?
Right. Yeah.
I was not thinking, and in my not thinking, I felt like this was for me. And so, and that shows the immaturity as well. And so now that I'm mature, of course, and not just in my walk with Christ, I know my worth and I know my value. And I share with them all the time when we talk to our older girls, when I talk to my son, about just making sure that you pay attention to what you see. Don't ignore nothing that you see. Anybody that is 10, 15, 16, 17,000 years older than you, we got some questions that we got to ask. What's going on in here? And so, and then it's not even, and I'm not saying that certain situations like that couldn't work. Okay, I'm not saying that. However, what I am saying is those who do date people who are years older than them, I want to make sure that their internal part, like what's going on in there, making sure that you're not searching for something in this person, because that was what happened to me. Okay. So I know everybody is different. So don't go in here and twisting my words up, because that's what people do, but it is what it is. But that was my story. And so, and those are areas that I had to really work hard on forgiving myself, because I could not. I beat myself up day after day because I could not believe that I actually was so naive and so just vulnerable in the area that I just basically let this man use and walk all over me.
Now, was this even after you got married again that you were still beating yourself up about it?
Um, no, I'm not gonna say that I still beat myself over it, after my marriage, after I got, my second marriage now. However, I did still kind of go back to places where I was concerned about my children because
Gotcha.
they grew up without their biological father,
Gotcha.
and they still don't have a relationship with their biological father.
Gotcha.
And so my issues, I settled. But then there was that point where I'm just like, you know, man, why I didn't make a better decision for my children. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
so it's like, but you can't say that because then the children wouldn't be here.
Right.
And so I know that God blesses, his hand, and he uses everything for his glory. But my children have been truly a blessing to me, and not only in helping me mature and grow and love, But my oldest son, he always come to me and he'd just be like, Mama, I love you so much. Thank you, and he's always telling me thank you and how much he is proud of me because I've
Oh,
done a lot of work.
yeah.
And so it's been a lot getting to this point. Um, and as a mother, when I think about my two older ones, I want to see them successful. And I don't want to see them carrying issues from dad, you know? My husband has been awesome, with doing everything he can to fulfill that role,
Mm-hmm.
um, as the absent father has not done his part. But they've had moments where they've had to have conversations with him. Um, they had a brother who passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and he when he passed away, I think that was the first time they had seen him in years.
Mm.
Okay, because when I moved to Georgia in '07, I think they were like maybe 4 and like 3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so when they finally went to Chicago, and my husband, it was my first time my husband and my ex had met. And so we went to the funeral. And while we were at the funeral, they were doing the obituary reading and everything like that. And you wouldn't believe that it was like over 20 children on that obituary.
I am not okay with that.
Jesus, keep me near the cross. Yeah. When I talk about don't look back, I'm talking about don't look back.
Don't look back.
And when you look back, you just look at what the Lord have saved and spared you from. Like thinking about that. Now I did because me and my babies, we had a long conversation the other day. I mean, my husband, because he likes to watch movies, he was he was calling them, hey guys, it's movie night. Come on, where y'all at? Where y'all at? He was like, Dad, you come up here. We want to hear Mama's story.
They was like, Mama's story is the movie tonight.
Listen, they wanted to hear Mama's stories. And then Grace was like, Mom, 22 children? Mom, what was wrong with you? Josh said, I think I need to go wash my brain out with bleach. And I was like, oh my God, the Lord have
Oh
mercy.
God. Not
But that
not he gotta
was
wash his blade out with
that's what he
bleach.
said to me, like, Lord. And so listen, like these podcasts are going to be candid conversations. It's not even like so much of me. I want people to really understand that your story really matters. Your story has meaning to it. Your story helps somebody else, because sometimes people be like, they don't understand what I'm going through, but I've been there. And so, and I had to kind of walk through this too. Like, okay, Tiffany, when you get to a point where you're comfortable with sharing a lot of the things that you've gone through in your life, I have to embrace that there are things that I may have done or experiences people may have had with me that it wasn't good. It wasn't a good transaction. You know what I mean? And so I have to give the same grace or whatever it is, because there may be somebody who want to make a podcast and like, I met this girl, her name was Tiffany, she said she was this, she was that, and she wasn't nothing, she wanted you. Look, listen, if you have had any encounters with me, I love you and I'm sorry, okay? But you got to get to a point where you understand that people need what you have to bring to the table, and that's that. And so I just felt like, I don't know, it wasn't like it was a night that I planned with my children, because we do a lot of talking, but I just remember when, and I remember now that there there are moments that I have questions when I ask myself, who was my mom before she was my mom?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have those answers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And I
Uh,
think it's just important. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm
no,
sorry.
go ahead.
I think it's just important that your kids know that mom was different before mom became mom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because that's how generational curses are broken. Because
Yeah.
if you don't know that there's a curse. You don't know that this thing that you've been thinking about has really, held your family bound for so long. So that's why conversations between family members needs to happen.
Super, 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 super important for conversations to happen. I think one of the things that are most important to me is that they are aware. So if they find themselves dealing with situations of their own, I can say, let's tap that. We're going to nip that in the bud.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, being that at that funeral, we found out that there were 20 something odd children, right? In the mix of this, I was like, Lord, what we doing with this? And one of the things that I had to pray for was the spirit of lust.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Um, if there was any perversion connected to that, lust, promiscuity, right? The spirit of seeking attention. If there was some rejection there, if there was some abandonment there, like the Lord had to highlight that thing because I understand the realms that God is taking me to when it comes to intercession and praying and breaking cycles in the family, And so these are the things that my children, especially my older children, had to be aware of, and I had to have conversations like, okay, like I don't know what this is, but like if there's any, pornography, just that self pleasure, all of that kind of stuff, we got to get to the root of this because we are seeing this thing in the open, right? And so when we were at the repast at this young man's funeral, um, can you imagine how, the feeling of my two children who had not seen their biological father in years being surrounded by so many brothers and sisters, right? That they knew nothing about, but they all were around the same age.
Yeah, that's bananas. I don't know what else to say about
Oh
that
my God.
other than it was bananas.
They were all around the same ages. So now, okay, I had to take this back because I'm like, Lord, thank you for sparing me. Because
Yeah,
I could have had all kinds of STDs and HIVs and
just all
all,
the things. All the
everything.
things.
Okay. Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't know who this is helping on today, but you know what you see what you see, and you need to just go, okay? And don't look back, okay? Um, so while I'm in this, I'm trying to navigate these many moments or these emotions that my children are feeling, right? But then thanking God too, because not only was it a lot of brothers and sisters, but it was a lot of baby mamas in the city too. you know,
That part.
a lot of people that I had not met. It was the young lady who lost her son because he was a twin. She had always been such a beautiful person to me. Never, anything like that. So she was just always beautiful and just fair and just never gave me any problems or anything like that. We always communicated. But the other people that was there, I knew nothing about them, except for the one who pulled me over on the side of the road. Uh, but I had people like coming up to me. Remember, you took all those pills and you went to the hospital and you was doing this and doing that. I'm like, this man was with his wife and then was with them and and telling them all about business because now that there was a time that I was severely depressed, And I had been going through a season of exhaustion, right?
Mhm.
And so it was not pills that time, okay? But my body crashed out on me,
Mm.
right? And so it was another moment that I was not feeling well in our marriage, and I asked him not to go out. And all I knew was I could not, my body just crashed out on me again. I couldn't feel my fingers, I couldn't lift my body up or anything like that. And so I was in the hospital for a week, like maybe a week
Oh,
or
your
so.
body shut down, shut down.
I
Yeah.
went through all kinds of MRIs and everything like that. But it wasn't even just the physical part of it. It was now that I'm alert and aware, like that was a spiritual attack on my body.
Mhm.
Right. And so not even like that it was just that spiritual attack, but all of the stuff that he came with that was attached to me. And so, but to just hear all these people come to me saying, "You remember this, you remember that." Yeah, I remember it, and I'm glad you know about it. You know what I mean? Like, thank you for telling me my business, because my husband was going home to tell you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, dang. But it just showed me how far God had brought me from. Because even in that, while all that was going on in its place, I was leaving this state, coming back to another state free. I was no longer associated with the person you all once knew. The drama, the coming up to your houses and banging on your window screaming, "Tell my husband to come downstairs. Oh, your kids need diapers." Girl,
Now wait a minute.
being just irate for no reason. Like just messy. Like why we arguing over a man? Like you can have that. But like I used to do stuff like that.
Yeah. And then you were young too.
I was super young.
Yeah, so when you're young like that, you be doing crazy stuff, and then you get older, you feel like, what in the world was I thinking?
And that's why I said, what in the world was I thinking? But you do stuff like that. But in all of that, I'm thankful that I had it all, because in everything that I had, I'm able to share with my now adult children. And I'm like super like big on, listen, if they can't talk to you right, you know what I mean? If they starting off conversations, cussing you out, fussing you out, hanging up the phone, if you feel, if your discernment, because my children are filled with the Holy Spirit, okay, and that's one thing that was not nurtured in me, the spirit of discernment. I was always a church girl. You know what I mean? So now that I'm looked at as this church girl, I'm naive and I just don't know nothing, right? And so, but I was ignoring many of my the discernment that, we people call it intuition, but it's your discernment that is letting you know that something is not right. And when you're not taking heed to that, you take yourself more underwater than you're supposed to.
And
You
then you just be going through unnecessary stuff. Like it didn't even have to be this way.
It did not have to be that way. And if you get to a point where you understand, if what's for you will locate you, what's for you, God will make sure that that thing knock at your door. It will. But some of these things we place on ourselves, and that's why I always say I have to learn how to care without carrying. Because when I met him, he came with a bunch of stuff, and that stuff wasn't enough for me not to pursue it. And so that shows you how blinded and how wounded I was inside with trying to find a filler of some sort. And it's just like, you got to get to the point where you say that there's more to me than this. I deserve more than this. I mean, like, it was like time after time, not only was women, pulling me off to the side of the road, but baby, there were people calling my job, just all kinds of stuff, just being reckless, and it just reminded me of how much I knew nothing about love.
That part.
Oh my Lord.
That part. So here's what I want you to do.
Mhm.
I'm putting on a producer hat now. I want you to talk to the young girls that think that that type of dysfunction and toxic behavior is love. What advice would you give them?
The advice that I will give them is, the first thing that comes to my mind is run, Forrest, run.
No, but for real. No, but for real. Like, friend, right now.
Like that's the first thing that comes to my mind is run, because especially if you're someone dating somebody so much older than you, they know what they're doing, right? It comes with a spirit of manipulation. It does come with you longing for father, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It shows that you don't have you don't have the capacity to really see yourself the way God sees you. And those are
Mm.
the areas that um that I knew nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I was coming up, we talked about God, 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 but it was all about judge, 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 judge.
Mm.
So yeah, I knew I was doing wrong, shacking up, right? And it was more so like, I'm going to get in trouble because God's going to get me because I'm doing this, but not even viewing it that He loves me so much that He places commandments and things in order for me not to even get to this place.
Mm-hmm.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so my thing is like, why aren't our communities or our young girls now, they're desperately seeking for relationships, they're desperately seeking for marriage, but you haven't been content in your singleness. You don't really understand how much of a blessing it is to have a one-on-one relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
That that in itself is so refreshing, so rewarding. So when you get to a place where you value yourself, when you know your worth, when you know that there's more to you, right? You won't settle for anything. But a lot of people just fall for anything because they've been looking for um, people to affirm them. Affirm what? Affirm that you're beautiful. Affirm that you're talented. Affirm that you're smart. Affirm, affirm, affirm. And a lot of that brokenness, it comes from not coming from your home. So when you have a prowler, right? Somebody who's prowling around, somebody who is because they know how to seek you out. They know what to say, when to say it, what words to say, them fresh lines, They know what to say to you that will get you to a place where you will buckle your knees.
Those lines work for a reason.
I want women to understand that there is more to you, and I will keep repeating that over and over and over and over again. There is more to you. Yeah, mama didn't tell you you was beautiful. Your mama probably actually treated you like you was another woman. Your mom was probably jealous of you because she didn't have the proper role model or the proper example in her life to remind her of her value, of her worth. that she is loved, that she is appreciated. So now you're dealing with a lot of stuff that comes from the generation behind you. That generation is dealing with something that comes behind them, and it's just a repetitive thing. And so you get to a point where you have to decide that enough is enough. I don't want to live my life like this anymore. I don't want to settle for just the okey doke anymore. I don't want to just I don't want to live my life in isolation because I don't know how to um I my identity is jacked up. You know what I mean? And so that those are the areas that are so important to me, making sure that as a leader, as a somebody of influence, as somebody that has called to the front, whether I like to be here or not, my role is to talk to you, to remind you the place that you're in now, God wants you to soar in that. But there's more to you than where you are now. And so if you're in a place where you're wasting time with a man and you feel like it has not moved forward, it has not gone forward, and it's a lot of one excuse after another. There's no commitment there. You've seen a lot of red flags by the way he talks to you, by the delay in text messages, or it just don't add up. It's just like, girl, like, come on. How much more do you need to see? You already are healing from a lot of heartbreak. Why are you adding more stuff for you to heal from? God wants you to be with somebody who loves you, who will respect you, who will honor you, and not just you, but honor his role as a man of God. I've shared this, with my children. I've shared this with my friends. I understand that, God has called me to be a standard, but there comes a point in your walk with Christ that you see yourself as a standard too, and see yourself as somebody that God does not play about. God does not play about his children. God will not play about his son or his daughter. And he not getting ready to just allow anybody to handle you anyway. But you got to allow yourself, you have to ask yourself, what are you allowing? What do you keep sugarcoating for everybody else? What do you keep tolerating? And these are the things that I had to constantly walk through, forgiving myself, because I allowed people and places and men to walk all over me. You knew the stories they told you didn't add up. It didn't sound right. Worked for nothing. You know what I mean? You know that man wasn't at no doggone at work. You know his schedule. You just you know when something is wrong. But it all stems from our upbringing. It all stems from a root. It's a root issue. A root issue that needs to be plucked up. It needs to be torn down, and a new foundation needs to be laid. And so, what does that look like? That looks like you being around a community of healthy women, right? A community of women who can help nurture you and guide you and uh, restore you, And I know you can't find it all in people, but remember, God uses people, okay? And you have to know who you are in Christ. Talk to God. Tell him about all your troubles. Tell him about, you know, I feel away, Lord, because my mom didn't love me. Or she did love you, but she didn't love you the way you needed her to. Her love language looked like making sure that she provided for you. You know, she kept the lights on. She kept clothes on your back. She made sure you had food in the refrigerator. That was her love language because that's the capacity she had for that moment. Because what if she was a single parent? Yeah, she missed a lot of moments in your life. She didn't talk to you about womanhood. She didn't talk to you about relationships. She didn't talk to you about the things that you knew that you needed for your future. But what if? What are you going to do with that? Are you going to continue to hold bitterness in your heart? Are you going to continue to hold unforgiveness in your heart? Are you going to continue to, um, you know, be dismissive and be dishonorable? You know, you have a part to play as well. And so, what does it look like when you don't get what you need from the ones that say that they love you? You remember that there's a scripture that says, when my mother and my father forsakes me. You remember that, he says that I will not leave you nor forsake you. You learn how to depend on what matters the most. And what matters the most is your value, your worth, and your time well spent with God. I think a lot of times people they go through these different identity situations, and they find themselves up at a lot of dead end roads. And sometimes you feel like you're stuck. And so one of the things is, like, when you're in a situation, and in that first marriage that I was in, as much as I tried to make that thing work, it was not something that God wanted for me. And it took him telling me that I don't want to be married to you anymore. After the going back and forth, the in between, the out, the this, that, and the other. But I think that was the best thing that he could have told me. And then now to this day, he don't want to talk to me because he feel like he messed up his whole life.
Wait, he told you that he didn't want to be with you, but now he don't want to talk to you because you're not listening. Okay, goodbye.
No, it's like, okay, so you know how, like, well, when he said he didn't want to be married to me anymore, that was because there were other more things priority to him. He didn't value marriage like that. And again, that was God protecting me, because who's to say what my life would have been if I would have stayed with him? You know, how many more bruises and how many other hits I would have taken. But when I say here now, years later, because I was June 1st, 2007 was when my divorce was final. Although the children are older, he's mentioned to me that he was sorry for the way he treated me. Hey guys, I'm a girl of many, 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 many stories. So this episode ran kind of long. So we're going to end this part right here, and I need you to come back next week for part 2. Holla.